Hey everybody, it is a new year and we're back. How you doing, Ian?
I am doing good, Peter. How are you?
I am still working off all that holiday weight. So everybody, welcome back to the Nova Files podcast. We're here in 2023 to hopefully lighten the mood, have some good times.
Absolutely.
And as always, talk as much geek nonsense as possible.
Hey, that's always a plus.
Yeah. So before we start, as always, make sure to check out our content over at Sierra Nova Comics. You can read my stuff. It's under the label of Medallion Comics. So right now we have Zenith Knights and some other stuff coming out later this year. And you, Ian?
You can check out my stuff under the label Triple Threat Comics, where I actually have my series Codename Hunter and my friend's series Solar Racer.
Awesome. And you can also find us on Instagram. So with that aside, let's talk about what's been going on in the geekosphere lately.
Yes, there's so much to talk about. Yes.
So Ian, why don't you start us off, man? What have you been up to in the last few months?
I've been working on my projects, as you can see. Well, those of you who can't see, I've been working on my projects. I've been working on Codename Hunter, trying to complete issue 3, and working slowly on issue 4 with my Inca friend Enrique Lopez. So yeah, I've been busy.
Nice. Whatever happened to that Batman versus Godzilla thing you were working on?
I don't know what the status of issue 3 is. I have to talk to the writer Eric Elliott about that, but for what I've heard, the artwork is all done. Just don't know when the release date is.
Oh, that reminds me of something. I was actually talking with my folks earlier today, and they're like, so when's the 4th issue of your book going to come out? Is it out yet? I'm like, should be ready soon, should be ready soon. But it's taken you 4 years to get it done. And then you still have another 6. I'm like, that's what happens when you work with indie books, unfortunately.
Yeah,
As much as I love all this stuff, we're still human. We're doing this as a side project, as a side hustle. I'd love to be putting out 2-3 books at a time, but like, you gotta work with the hand you're dealt.
yeah, this is kind of why issue 3 is taking me a while to the printers, because again, as you know, I've been on many other projects, and of course, I'm a freelance artist as well. So you had to start, looking for work to pay the bills.
Oh, for sure. I work in HR in my day to day. So, like, I work, I pay the bill, I come home, I cry into a pillow at night, like any man my age does at this time of the year,
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, you just gotta keep at it. Actually, I'm slowly starting to write a kind of looking into writing a light novel.
Oh,
So that's still on the early phases. So something with a lot more limited art, but something I could actually get the story across, and hopefully down the road, if it does well in that format, eventually look into getting it into a artistic adaptation.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, because right now I'm currently almost done with issue 4 of Zenith Knights. I'm super happy about that. I can't wait for that to come out. Like my artist on the project, Miguel, some of his best work I've seen. It's like, oh boy, I cannot wait to start showing that off. I'm telling you. And not only that, but once that's done, we're putting issues 1 through 4 in a collection. On top of that, I'm going back to issue 1, changing a little bit of dialogue and adding up to 2 to 3 pages to it.
Wow. So you do what?
Yeah, so it's like there was always this one scene in issue 1 I was never happy with. It's like with one of the characters showing off what they can do, and I'm like, I don't like this, but I see why you had to do it like that because of time constraints, pace constraints. I'm like, okay, no, let's go back, re-edit that page, add a whole other page just to like blow shit up.
Yeah,
So
you don't too much in the first issue. You want to give the audience a taste of what's to come. So I think yeah, this is definitely a smart idea to go back to issue one and take that page out, put a new one in, because it just makes sense. Because again, you want to build the suspense.
Exactly. So it's like, okay, cool. I probably have to change a few dialogue things here or there. I want to add a little bit more background information. So I might add another page of exposition. So I'm currently working on that. And it just kind of fun going back. It's like, hey, issue one, the DX edition, so to speak. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And plus our the project that we've been working on, I'll be, once that's done, I'll be releasing it as well, just finishing up a few things.
Well, that's fantastic because I can't wait to talk about it. I can't wait to promote it with you.
Oh,
So,
indeed. Now, so yeah, like, that actually reminds me of something I wanted to talk about today. We work in the indie sphere. We make a bunch of our comics, and we make everything in a Western style.
yeah.
And I'll ask a question. Outside of indie books, are you reading any mainline comics right now?
I'm actually reading a few. I will admit that I am reading a few. For some odd reason, and I don't know why, because this series has gone off the trail for a number of years now, maybe the last 15 years, and that's the Spider-Man series. Yeah, I've mostly been, following that since the new storyline came in, where Peter MJ had split up. Something had happened. We didn't know what the hell was going on, but they split up. He's working with Norman Osborn. His Aunt May didn't speak to him for a while, so pretty much he's burned bridges with everybody. And slowly and surely, we're just seeing him back on the trail. And the reason why I'm reading this series in particular is mostly because I'm trying to make sure that I don't follow these same ridiculous tropes that I've been because I have to commend Marvel. They are very consistent with reusing tropes. They're very consistent. I had seen it in so many comics. I didn't even see it in the series in the issue One More Day. I had seen it in that. That's when I actually stopped reading Spider-Man for a number of years.
I think a lot of people dropped Spider-Man at that point. But I actually, what you just said reminds me, I was actually on 4chan of all places, and they were talking about Spider-Man. And somebody said, like, you could become a master class in writing by reading Spider-Man right now, because it teaches you everything not to do in a good narrative.
Yeah. This is the problem. This is the problem, which is continuing.
Yeah.
I just look, you need to take chances, you need to take bold chances with some of these characters. I will tell you the series that actually they took chances. Tom King's run of Batman. Widely popular, made a lot of sales. Some ideas were controversial at the time, I will admit that, but he took chances. He brought the characters into different ways. He took, one of the most popular characters, Alfred Pennyworth, and unfortunately killed him, but it just changed the nature of the character, to take away that core element from him that had been with him for so many years since the beginning. Take that away from him. What do you have left? You still have the family. And you're starting to see him rely more on the family than you have in previous, storylines. So King took obviously chances with that because it was a bold step. It was a bold direction to take. Now, let me say this though. As many of you probably have read Superman for the past 2 years, you had known that Clark had revealed his identity to the world, right? You all knew that.
Did they undo that, or is that still a thing?
No, they outdid that because apparently Lex Luthor felt that, and he admitted this, that the world needs Superman, but they don't need to know who he is. Because they need to see Superman as a godlike being, not as a human. So he took a supervillain from the Elite and sent out a message making everyone forget that Clark and Jonathan Kent were Superman, except for the core, people.
Yeah, I'm for the people who are on audio only, like I am just face palming right now and sighing because I'm just feeling this from Spider-Man One More Day and the whole like the Forget Me spell with Doctor Strange and like the latest Spider-Man movie. It's like, okay, this is not my first rodeo. We've seen this before.
Yeah, this is a big FU to the audience members.
But to be fair, like you were saying earlier with like Batman, like killing off Alfred, but like I'm just thinking to myself, okay, yeah, that writer did like a big step, but then the next guy comes along and they just undo everything and set everything back to a status quo.
Well, Alfred's still dead in the series, but they took away Bruce's money. He's no longer a billionaire.
Yeah, you say that to me now, but I'm pretty sure if I check back in a year or two, Alfred will be alive and he'll be even richer.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, it's going to happen. The minute I actually saw this was going to happen in the series, I was like, "There's no way it's going to last. No way, no way. It's not going to last."
Exactly. It's like that's why I have so much trouble reading comics. Is that nothing is ever. Everything returns to a status quo. Everything goes back to normal. And what was I reading? I've tuned into a little bit of Spider-Man because they have that like Edge of Spider-Verse event, End of Spider-Verse event going on. And I love that stuff. I love Spider-Man. I love all those characters. Spoiler alert. In the first issue, they kill off Jessica Drew Spider-Woman. And I'm just thinking, oh, okay, I wonder how long that's going to last. Considering how hard they were pushing her in recent years as a character, I sincerely doubt she's going to stay off the grid. And the only other thing I read is, and this is kind of like segue into what I wanted to talk about later, is the Marvel Unlimited stuff, where they kind of have a web comic format as an app where you can read a bunch of free comics for a subscription. Yeah. And the reason why I started reading that one is because they had made a Spider-Girl story in there.
Oh.
And it was like, oh, this is set in the MC2 universe, following all the shit in Spider-Verse. Benji's a little grown up. Her dad's alive again because apparently he inherited the other. And I'm kind of curious to see where that goes because they teased that and then they kind of just reference it. And I'm like, okay, I want to know about this shit. I don't care about anything else. Give me more of this shit. Now, I loved Spider-Girl back in the day. That is like by far one of my all-time favorite comic books.
Well, yeah, because you're taking a character that's already established, but you're changing it. It was like with Batman Beyond, you're bringing a younger generation into the series, but you're also keeping the continuity somewhat, there.
Yeah, it was a good passing of the torch. Anyways, so the reason why I bring that up is because I've actually been reading more web comics in that style than I have actual comics these days.
Really?
Yeah, so I'm a lot on webtoons and I'm reading like these long form comics that and it's a very interesting art style in that everything is made for you to scroll. So it's like one long stream. And a lot of these are actually free to read. And I don't know if you heard of this term, it's called manhwa. It's usually either Chinese or Korean web comics. And they're blowing up right now. They're really popular. Wow. A lot of them get translated, and obviously a lot of them have the same tropes. A lot of it has video game logic, isekai logic, where people are sucked into another world, or like, my wife is the demon queen. My wife is an elf. Like it's really like kind of ridiculous titles like this. Yeah. But I've been finding myself reading more of these lately because it's something fresh.
Something new.
Yeah. And the fact that these are actually updating on a fairly regular basis. Usually they come out with like a chapter every few weeks, once a month, or even once a week, depending on some of them. And you just read and scroll, read and scroll, read and scroll. Some of them are paid sites, some of them are free, depending on the ones you want. If you're paying, you can get some issues early. And it's very interesting. They have a very anime aesthetic, most of them. But the thing I like about it, it's all new stories. Because going back to comics, and even the thing with indies like us, the amount of time and effort it takes to make a comic book is a lot.
Yeah,
Like,
but a lot of times we're just doing it by ourselves. Sometimes we do have obviously, you know, a writer, an artist, or a different artist, thinker, what have you. But
yeah,
sometimes you'll find that we're doing it ourselves, just us.
100%. But usually, like for us, it could take us like such a long time to get a single issue out. Me right now, it's taking me a year at a time to get one issue. Hopefully, in the next year, we can start bringing that up to two. But then I'm seeing these guys with this style, and they're able to like get several chapters out quite quickly. And it's also the whole thing about the Western medium. Like we have a very specific style,
Yeah.
but I am curious to see and maybe experiment with new styles with this in the indie scene. Because if they're able to put out this much content, and this is like coming out like fairly quickly. Like a lot of these people get like a fairly decent backlog and put them out on a regular basis. There was this one I was reading on Webtoons called Mage and the Demon Queen, which is like a really ridiculous and very horny story, but I fucking love it. And the concept of the story is it's very fantasy. It's kind of a lighthearted comedy as well, a bit of an action. Um, there's this girl who's fallen in love with the Demon Queen. So the only way she can impress her is to defeat her in battle. So every week she goes to her tower and challenges her to a fight. And she dies every time and then gets resurrected.
Okay.
So it gets to the point where the Demon Queen is now starting to expect her. And it's like, where the hell's Mallory? Like, why isn't she here right now? Like this is it's Tuesday, should be here. And obviously, like the drama builds as it goes on. Like there's a lot of intrigue, a lot of like summoning heroes and all that. But I know the creator right now took a break, and I can't wait for them to come back. I'm really looking forward to where it's going to go. But what happens is they kind of put it out like a TV show. Like, hey, this is the first season. So you have like 50 chapters that come out over the period of the year. They take a half a year break, come back with another 50.
Hmm. Yeah, it's actually interesting. Taking that concept and bring it to these type of comics that we do, the indie comics, it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, because Marvel's already practicing that with the Spider-Man Unlimited comics. Like if you actually go on, I know like if you make right now with Marvel Unlimited, like not that I'm going to plug them, but you can make a free trial account and you can read as many of them as you want because all of them a lot of them are free.
Hmm.
So you can go on the app, you can check out, okay, this is not as much art as most comic books, but it's getting the story told.
Sometimes the simplest ways are the best.
Yeah. And then that's why I'm saying, like, I want to get my story told as a Western comic right now, just to finish it off. That's the comic I'm working on now. But for future comics, I find this might be a way that the medium might evolve a little bit because let's be honest, the way the medium is now, how we're working at it and like how it's organized, it's not as efficient. Like,
I would admit that. You have to imagine what would have been like, to be in the bullpen, in some of these companies to say, just to see how they did things,
mhm. I
A very
fully agree. But it's different when you're making this as a career and when you're making this as a hobby. Like when you're working for a big corporation, obviously you have a bunch of people working on the book, it's coming out. But when you're doing it like on the indie scene, it's like whoever's working on it is probably doing it as a side project. Like you said, you have like 3 different things you're working on. You don't have time to work on your main book.
Yeah. But but here's the thing, I do try to make time, to do my main book and also these other projects.
Mhm.
It's not easy sometimes. It really isn't because I have to set my priorities saying, okay, I need to do this because I want to get paid. Then I have to do this and this. Sometimes I would actually just work on the projects at the same time, sometimes. And that has helped. That has helped a lot. But still, at some point, you have to say, okay, I need to put more focus on this right now. These two, these are not really paying. You know, one I hope will be paid later, but these two are not really paying, so I gotta focus on this.
I agree. So what I'm looking at right now is like, because the industry is changing, a lot of things are going online. Obviously, you have some of the old guard who love buying the paper books, who love going to conventions, getting the new stuff, seeing in the old school style. But a lot of the newer generation, they're not picking up these books. They're starting to read more webtoons, web novels, web comics. And I find this particular style is a good fusion of like what was and what's to be. And
Yeah.
just it's something I find that's worth looking into and maybe exploring a little bit, because I've had a lot of enjoyment reading some of these. Like there's this one I'm reading called and once again, as for a Westerner, these all have like very ridiculously long titles.
Yeah.
Skeleton Soldier Who Couldn't Defend the Dungeon. And I'm just getting way too much enjoyment reading that one.
It sounds like an interesting concept.
Yeah, the story is that it's basically like a no-name skeleton mob like soldier, like like in any like fantasy game, like like the skeleton with the sword and all that.
Yeah.
So apparently the story is that he dies trying to defend a dungeon, and then he wakes up at the moment he was resurrected. But here's the thing, he's there with the original necromancer who summoned him, not the succubus he was serving. He's gone back in time roughly about 40 years.
Oh boy.
And every time he dies, he goes back to that one point. But everything, it's kind of like a Groundhog's Day story. So you keep seeing all these characters and all the different scenarios while the main character works out what's going on. And he just keeps getting stronger, all the experience he gains, everything. It has a bit of video game logic to it as well. He's leveling up, he's gaining experience. But as you go through the story, it's like, cool, you saw him do the scenario this way. Now he does the scenario this way. But wait, something's happened. He's completed the scenario. So when he goes back, things are different now. The world has changed. And it's been running for quite a few years now that I think about it. I think they're up to like 200 and something, 250 chapters.
Wow.
Yeah. So like there is an interesting market for these stories. And like, obviously there's the healthy amount of some fan service and all that. That always
yeah.
Because in Western media, we complain about this a lot. But on the other side of the world, it's like, yeah, you got to have your about 80% of ass and titties here so we can get your book off the ground.
That's quite an interesting way of putting it, but yeah, he's not wrong, folks. He's not wrong.
Yeah, I was actually reading another one, and I'm like, why is this book full of so many ass shots? There's even like really good ass shots of some of the guys. I'm like, I'm confused, but I'm going to keep scrolling.
Yeah. I have no words, folks, because it's all true. It's all true. You guys know it. You know it.
Yeah, because the thing I like about these, they're in color, they're interesting, they're fun to read, and the visual style of like just scrolling through a tablet or a phone is kind of a little bit dynamic as well, because some of the flow and the art is made to be moved like that.
Yeah.
It's a whole new medium, and I find like even some of my friends who I've spoken to in the indie scene are starting to experiment with it.
Oh. Well, it's already started.
Mm-hmm. It's just something fun to look into. Like honestly, I've been thinking about trying to adapt some of my comics into that style to put it on webtoons to get a little bit more traction.
Yeah. Well, we have to start somewhere,
Yeah, because unfortunately, we're living in the digital era. People are living online, they're downloading online, they're marketing online, and sometimes they forget there's a real world.
Yep.
But yeah, no, it's like just sharing a little bit of what I've been reading as well.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Like I'm more of a writer, you're more of an artist. I'm really curious to hear your opinion on this stuff.
I honestly think, it's a very bold thing. I'm always interested in seeing the medium take different directions. So this is a great idea, because it gives a new generation, a younger generation, like you said, the ability to create comics very quickly, but put them on the webtoons, which is 10 times easier. 10 times easier.
Mhm.
Because you can get your chapters done quickly. You build your audience at much faster pace than going to Kickstarter and just hope that people will actually buy the books.
Yeah, because let's be honest, there's a market for those books as well,
Yes,
but that's like more the old guard and some people getting into that as well. Whereas the webtoons format, that's where a lot of the new blood is going, I find.
yeah.
And hell, even if Marvel's experimenting with this and like they're giving those out for free, you got to know something's going on if they're trying it.
Well, the business is ever changing. You have to realize, maybe 15 years ago, I had this instructor when I was at SVA,
Mhm.
old school guy, worked obviously in the big two companies, said to my class one morning, if you think about really being a comic artist, don't. Because it's a lot of work, it's a lot of heartache to try and break in this business. Just don't. I sat there thinking, okay, very honest way of putting it, very, very eloquently put. He did have a point, but what he didn't realize, and what I found out later, that the industry was changing even then because indie comics were starting to blow up in a big way
Mhm.
because people were just hungry, starving for new original content, and that's what indie comics was just starting to do. It's still doing now. So the fact that we're actually, having webtoons, you know, and Marvel experimenting on it, just goes to show that obviously they're trying to keep up with the times, but also the industry is changing once again. It's going to keep on changing, keep evolving, because if you don't evolve, you're stuck in the past, and that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. It's not good, in a personally, and it's not good in a business way. It's not.
Not at all. You got to get with the times. You got to experiment. You got to try all sorts of new things. It's like I'm doing my main comic, working on the other one, starting off trying out a light novel, and in the future I might look into this format as well for a comic. Obviously, got to look into artists and pricing, and how all that goes. But it's going to be an interesting experiment, that's for sure.
Yeah, and the thing is, not just the business, but you don't stop evolving it either, because like you said, you're trying new stuff. You're considering going into this new medium. Well, not really new, but you know what I'm saying, because you want to evolve.
Hmm. And like I said, like a more dynamic reading process through scrolling could be interesting art wise. Well, like it makes me think, how would these scenes look? How would this progress? How would this evolve? And the other thing is, like, you have to understand, like, if people are reading it like this, they're reading it fairly quickly, so there's not too much time. You have to be very punctual with your art in that sense. You know what I mean? You got to be
Yeah,
like, okay, I can't put filler in here. I got to really put in, okay, this matters, this matters, this matters, this matters, because people are probably going to be scrolling fairly quickly and power reading this stuff. But everyone's different in that regard.
yeah. It also takes what you just mentioned, which is especially interesting, is because you have to also write a different way.
Hmm.
That's a whole nother challenge, because we're used to writing, scripts at a certain way. But now with this new medium, again, not new, we have to think about it differently. Saying, like you said, this has to matter, this has to matter, this has to matter. I can take out all this filler, but still keep the spine of the story.
Oh, for sure. If you want to, after this, I can send you a few of the ones I'm reading, and like that way you can just take a look at what they look like.
Yeah, go ahead, send it to me.
Perfect. Ugh. Oh, man. I think this was a fun topic for our first one back.
Absolutely.
So how about we switch gears and we
Okay.
talk a little bit what's been going on in, like TV, movies, and all that.
All right, let's do it.